family bullied me my entire life, so I cut them off and moved out to live with my grandparents, but now they are begging me for a fresh start right before my wedding because my grandparents changed their will and give the inheritance to me instead of them. So, I'm getting married next week, and right now, my family, who haven't reached out to me in 10 years, is begging me for a fresh start, starting with my wedding. I cut them off 10 years ago, when I moved out of my house at 18. In fact, I moved out literally the day I turned 18 and started staying with my grandparents. And we have my brother and parents to thank for that, because my elder brother bullied me my entire life, and my parents allowed it without any interference. My brother was 5 years older than I, and much bigger than me when I was a kid. So I would get pushed around a lot, and no matter how much I complained to my parents, they simply did not seem to care. They just said that this was how brothers played, it was going to be rough and tumble, and I should get used to it, and they expected me to be fine with it. And then slowly, as we started getting older, it was not just the physical part of it that would hurt, he would bully me in other ways as well. Constantly making a joke out of me, humiliating me at school in front of my friends, making fun of my grades and my appearance, while I was going through puberty, that kind of stuff. And it was not just friendly teasing, the things he would say and do were downright mean. He used to pull off the most horrible pranks on me at school with his friends and always made me feel terrible about myself. And by then, I had learned that our parents were not going to do anything about this. They were just going to sit back and watch. I was not allowed to speak about this with anybody else in the family either, because my parents had made it right here that if I tried to humiliate them in front of the family, then I would be very sorry. And I honestly didn't want to find out what that was all about, so I never said anything. But a couple of days before my 18th birthday, my brother and I got into a massive fight, and it turned into a brawl, and by the end of it, I was really hurt. And even then, my parents did not bother to find out who started the fight, which had obviously been my brother, but just yelled at me for picking a fight with him when I knew that I was going to lose because I was so much smaller. That was the day that I decided to storm out and head towards my grandparents' place. My dad's parents lived just a couple of blocks away, and I showed up there, and I told them everything. I didn't just tell them about the incident that happened that day, I told them about everything that had been happening for so many years and why I hadn't been able to talk about it, out of fear of my parents. My grandparents were scandalized, because in front of everyone else, my family always put up this act of being totally perfect so nobody could have guessed that this was going on at home. They immediately told me that I was welcome to come stay with them and move out immediately, and that was my ticket out of there. A few days later, on my 18th birthday, when I was all packed up, I didn't even bother to say goodbye to my family, I just left. And since then, we haven't spoken. After that, it was pretty much my grandparents who took care of me. They covered my college tuition, let me stay with them while I was looking for a job, and kept in touch with me, being my family. My parents and brother did speak to my grandparents, and my grandparents often tried to get them to talk to me, to apologize and make everything right again. But my family was adamant that I should be the one to talk to them because I was the one who ran away for no reason. I was not interested, and since they were not willing to accept their own fault, we had nothing to talk about. For 10 years, we have had absolutely no contact. But now, they've reached out to me to ask for a fresh start, and they sent me an email a couple of days ago. Even when I got engaged or when my invitations went out, they did not bother to contact me. So when I read the email, where they were asking me to talk to them, I decided to ignore it. But I did talk to my grandparents about it, and they told me that they had their reasons. Apparently, a couple of weeks before this, my grandparents had spoken to the lawyer, changed their will, and instead of splitting everything equally between my dad and me, and my brother, they decided to leave the majority of everything to me. So whatever assets they have, after they're gone, most of it will belong to me with the exception of a few $1,000s that will be split between my dad and my brother. And they informed my family of this because they wanted them to know that this was going to be my wedding gift, and they were not going to be receiving much because of how they had treated me. Over the years, my grandparents had made several attempts to get my family to talk to me, but they had always failed. And with time, they had realized that their son, my father, my mom, and my brother were all horrible people. So not only were they cutting them off altogether now, my grandparents had decided to rub it in their faces, and that's why they wanted a fresh start with me, because they wanted forgiveness from my grandparents, not me. And when I found out about this, I decided to write back to them, and I told them that I knew exactly why they were asking for a fresh start, and I told them that they were pathetic, and they were getting exactly what they deserved, which was absolutely nothing. I spoke about it with my fiancée as well. She knows everything already, but when I told her about my decision to reply to their email, she told me that it was totally unnecessary. She doesn't think that I did anything wrong, but she does think that it was a bit petty of me, and I should have just let it go and ignored them. We didn't fight about it, and neither did she seem to be too concerned about any of this, but her comment got me thinking, and I guess I actually was being too petty about all this. I'm not gonna apologize to them or anything, but I still wanna know, Ida, for replying to my family and taunting them? Update 1. Okay, so it's been a few days since I responded to my parents, and today, they wrote back to me, saying that they knew that whatever they had done to me in the past was really wrong. And that they had had the realization recently, which is why they were reaching out to me for a fresh start and asking me for forgiveness. It did not have anything to do with the inheritance. It was so transparent. I actually felt bad for them, because I knew for a fact that this had everything to do with the inheritance. Because if they had really felt sorry about everything that they had done, they wouldn't have waited so long to apologize to me. I find it very hard to believe that it took them 10 years to realize that the way they treated me was not right. Especially when my grandparents had been telling them over and over again that they needed to apologize to me. Even until recently, a few months back, they had been strongly against the idea of apologizing to me, but now, as soon as they know that everything that my grandparents own, everything is going to be inherited by me after they passed away, all of a sudden, they have realized their mistake? Yeah, right. Anyway, it doesn't matter, because I didn't reply to that email, I just blocked them. As for my fiancée, it really wasn't a big deal. She just likes to speak her mind, as everyone should, and so she said something, but it kind of stuck with me. So I spoke to her about what she had said about me being petty, and I told her that I guess I had actually been petty, but honestly, they deserve this. And she just shrugged it off. She told me that at the end of the day, I was the one who had been through all that. I was the one who knew how to deal with the situation, and she wasn't going to judge me for it. The only thing that she was worried about was that this was happening too close to the wedding, and she did not want them showing up or anything. And when she brought that up, I actually thought about it, and I wouldn't put it past them. After all, they always love a good opportunity to create trouble for me, so I decided to tighten the security at the venue because I did not want to take any risks. Apart from that, I don't think that I have anything to worry about. I've also spoken to my grandparents, and they have told me that a couple of days before this, before they replied to my email, they had tried to get in touch with my grandparents as well, but my grandparents had blocked them everywhere, so it was quite difficult for them. In the end, they had decided to call them from a burner phone, and my grandpa had told them that they really did not want to speak to them. Because they had given them several chances over the past 10 years to change as people, but they hadn't. In fact, they also told me about the incident that actually prompted all of this. A few weeks ago, even before they had made any changes to the will, my grandparents had a huge fight with my parents regarding my brother. Apparently, for the past couple of years, my grandparents had been funding my brother's business, just because my dad had requested them to do so. But in truth, my brother didn't have what it takes to run his own business, and it hadn't been going well for a couple of years, but even then, my parents kept insisting that they keep putting money into the business, and after a while, my grandparents had stopped. So, because of that, my parents got into a huge fight with them, and it just went to show how ungrateful they actually are, because my grandparents just did what was right for them. They chose to completely overlook all the money that had been put into the business, all the chances that my brother had received, and chose to focus on the fact that my grandparents had decided to stop funding it. It was a pretty bad fight, and after that, my grandparents decided that they didn't want anything to do with these people anymore. For 10 years, they had continued to forgive my father, hoping that he would change, but clearly, that had not happened. In fact, he had gotten even worse with time. All of them had a terrible attitude, and that's why they had decided to cut them off, leave most of their inheritance to me, and that was it. They hadn't told me about it earlier because they did not want me to get stressed out before my wedding, but honestly, this just makes me feel better about my response because I really can't imagine what kind of people would do something like this. My family really is the worst of the worst. I don't know what to say to them. Anyway, now that I know all this, I'm glad that they are not a part of my life anymore and that they're not going to be part of my grandparents' life anymore either. I had never had a problem with my grandparents choosing to keep in touch with my family, but now, I'm happier because they're totally done. Update 2. Hi, so there are just a couple of days to go before my wedding, and today, my grandparents called me up and told me that my parents and brother are not willing to let this go. Apparently, today, they showed up at my grandparents' place, demanding my address, so they could come to me and apologize to me in person because clearly, this was very important and it had to be done. They did not have any of the nasty attitudes that they had been carrying forward in their life so far. In fact, they were actively trying to be as apologetic as possible. But my grandparents made it very clear that they had already tried to apologize to me once through email, and if I had not accepted that, then they did not feel comfortable sharing my address with them so they could show up in person because I was getting married in a few days, and they did not want to stress me out before that. So whatever it was, it would have to wait until after the wedding, but my family didn't back off. They said that they were not going to leave until they knew my address or any other way to contact me, because they were blocked everywhere, and they really needed to talk to me. They said that they had realized their mistake, and they really did not want to waste any time. They knew that I was getting married, and they wanted to apologize to me before the wedding because that way, it would be a symbolic fresh start for everyone. I don't know what that was supposed to mean, but I guess they could have a fresh start by being a little more considerate and not thinking about themselves for once. I guess that's too much to ask, though. Anyway, they kept insisting that they had to talk to me before the wedding, and they refused to leave until my grandparents said that they would call the cops because it was getting weird now. At that point, my dad started trying to emotionally manipulate my grandparents, saying that he knew that he had messed up, but as parents, the least that he could ask of them was a second chance. Here's the thing, though, it was not my grandparents' place to give him a second chance. If they were really sorry for what they had done, then they were supposed to know that I was the one they had to apologize to, not my grandparents. And that's the same thing that my grandparents told them. that it was not their place to give them a second chance, and it was pointless talking to my grandparents right now because they did not have any control on the situation. If I wanted to talk to them, if I wanted to forgive them, only then would they be able to help them out. But since I had made it very clear that I did not want anything to do with my parents at the moment, it could not be helped. And while my grandparents were telling me, I could just feel how frustrated they were, because they had spent their entire morning trying to reason with my parents and my brother. Even my brother had shown up, though he did not say anything, and it was pretty obvious from his face that he did not even want to be there, especially because the situation had to do with me and asking me for forgiveness. That's what my grandparents told me. He just stood there in a corner while my parents spoke, trying to look apologetic. It's actually just really concerning how far they are going to go for money. They don't really care about anybody apart from themselves. And I don't understand why this is such a big deal to them, because as far as I'm concerned, my parents have always done well for themselves. They're not billionaires, but neither are my grandparents. In fact, I would say that all of them are pretty much at the same level wealth-wise. With the exception of my brother, everyone has pretty much done well in their lives, and I think even my brother can get his life back on track if he goes back to working at his corporate job, instead of trying to make it in business, which I really don't think that he has any sort of business acumen for. So why are they so obsessed with this inheritance? I don't understand. Anyway, after my conversation with my grandparents, I told them that the next time they show up, they should just not be let inside, and my grandparents agreed, because it's getting way out of hand now. They wasted almost 2 hours today, and my grandparents were pretty agitated by the end of it. Nothing good is going to come out of talking to them. That's something that we have all realized by now, so we're just gonna avoid them. And for the next couple of days, we are going to be away for the wedding anyway, so they can keep showing up at my grandparents' place, but it's going to be pointless. I just hope that they're not able to find the wedding venue, that's it. Most of my family, who have been invited, know about my relationship with my family, so I'm hoping that they don't reveal anything about the venue and stuff. But even if they do, we still have security, so I'm not too worried. Update 3. Hi, everyone. So it's been a few days since my last update, and I'm getting married tomorrow. I made sure to ask every guest that I had invited if they had shared any details of my wedding with my parents or my brother, and everyone said no. I was glad that I did not have much to worry about, but even then, I'm posting right now because a couple of hours ago, I received another email from my parents. And this time, they were even more desperate than before. All they knew was that I was getting married tomorrow. That's the only piece of information that they had. And they started off by congratulating me, but in the end, everything boiled down to the same thing. I honestly swear to God, if I have to read the words fresh start one more time, I'm literally gonna barf. Because even after congratulating me, telling me that they hoped that I would have a beautiful wedding and all the staff, they still went back to the same thing and told me that they were still hoping for a reply from me that would be favorable for them, hoping that I would forgive them for everything and try to talk to them at least. They told me that they had tried very hard to talk to everybody in the family and find out where exactly I was getting married, but nobody had given them any information. So no, they were only counting on me to tell them where I was, so they could show up and bless me because they really felt sorry about everything that had happened, and they wanted to be there for me on my special day because they wanted to show me that they had changed and they were being supportive now. They could have been supported by choosing to stay away from me and not stress me out before my special day, but then again, that's actually a reasonable thing to expect, so naturally they wouldn't do that. Once again, they ended their email by saying that they hoped that I would forgive them and let them know the venue so they could show up for the wedding, even if it's last minute. I honestly just rolled my eyes and deleted it. I didn't even talk about it to anybody else, because I didn't want to bring this up and make everything unpleasant again. I'm getting married tomorrow, and I want to be happy. So I don't want to talk about this nonsense. Whatever this is, it can wait until after a marriage, and then I'll discuss it with my wife and grandparents, but until I've said, I don't want to think about my parents, so I just wanted to get it out of my system. Update 4. Hey, everyone. So I got married a week ago, and since then, things have pretty much been perfect. We had a great time, with no problems, everything went smoothly, and my parents did not show up because, well, they had no idea where to go. And for the past few days, I didn't even bother to check my inbox because I knew that they might have tried to contact me again, and I did not want to see anything to do with them. I did not want to think of them, so I steered clear of it altogether. Today, though, since we've come back home, I decided to finally check my inbox, and just as I had expected, I had about 10 emails from them. All of them were the same. They were sorry. They really wanted to be there for me. They could understand why I was acting like this. They really wanted to talk to me, blah blah blah. I deleted all of them, blocked this new email address as well, and tried to move on with my life. But as soon as I was done with that, my grandparents called me up and they told me that my father was at their place, and he wanted to talk to me. I could tell that they were probably very distressed, so I decided to deal with this once and for all and talk to him. Because otherwise, I knew that they would just keep finding new ways to bother me and my grandparents, and I didn't want that. Besides, 10 years had already passed. It wasn't like I was scared of them. I just wanted to get this over with. So after filling my wife in on whatever was going on, I headed towards my grandparents' place, and once I was there, it was actually my dad who opened the door and greeted me. He hugged me, started telling me how sorry he was. He said that he had misunderstood me my entire life, but in reality, I was the son that he had always wanted, and my brother had turned out to be a total loser. I think he probably thought that that was what I wanted to hear, but it just made me feel bad, because once again, they were doing the same thing. They were pitting us against one another and trying to play favorites based on how much they thought we were worth, when in reality, they should have loved us both equally. Anyway, I pushed him away, and I told him that I knew what this was all about, and that they needed to stop bothering all of us because I had already made up my mind, and I did not want anything to do with them. So if they thought that they could constantly get in the way of our lives and force us to get back in touch with them, then they were wrong and delusional. The only reason my grandparents had even called me up this time and asked me to come over was to deal with this once and for all, give my father a chance to speak to me in person so he would know for a fact that I was done and dusted with them. I did not owe them even this much, but I was doing it as a favor to my grandparents because I did not want them to constantly suffer. I know that it was hard for them to keep turning their own son away, especially considering the fact that he was their only child. But my parents were so inconsiderate that they were only interested in what was good for them. They didn't care how much pain they were causing anybody else at any given moment. They had treated me badly, and now they had to face the consequences for it. They had been disrespectful towards my grandparents, so they had to face the consequences of that. What goes around comes around as well, and it was about time they realized that. They are not an exception to the rule, and they needed to stop begging because it was pathetic, and their whole act could not be more transparent. We knew that they were only interested in the inheritance. They couldn't care less about us. I also told him that it was really sad that they were so obsessed with money that they couldn't even be bothered to think about their own dignity, because as far as I was concerned, they were just as well off as my grandparents, so it's not like they really desperately needed it. And that was when my father started screaming at me, saying that this is what I must have said to my grandparents to manipulate them into leaving everything to me, and that he knew that I was behind all of this, and I had just exposed myself. I had no idea what he was talking about, but anyway, I knew that he just wanted a scapegoat to blame, and I was that, as usual. He said that how much money he had or didn't have was none of my business, but my grandparents' inheritance was rightfully his, and he was not going to let me have it, and he was going to go to every court that he had to make sure that I wouldn't be able to take it away from him. My grandparents were obviously very disturbed, so they got involved. There was a lot of yelling, and eventually, my dad stormed out, promising me that I would not have this attitude and this inheritance for much longer, and that he was going to come after all of us with lawyers, and then he stormed out. I guess he couldn't stand the fact that I was finally standing up to him and calling him out on his BS, so his ego got the better of him, and he had to finally drop the act of being apologetic and whatever. Well, I'm glad that I decided to give him a chance because now, he can't pretend anymore, and neither can any of them act like they are all saints, who are very sorry for whatever they have done. Anyway, whatever he said, it didn't really scare any of us very much. Because we know that it's not possible. It's up to my grandparents who they want to leave their inheritance to. And considering the fact that they are still well and alive, I don't think any sane lawyer is going to take this up because it's pretty ridiculous. On top of that, there are no loops in this as well, because my grandparents were careful enough to leave at least something to my dad and my brother, so they couldn't claim that they had been excluded on purpose. It's an airtight will, and they cannot do anything about it. Anyway, after my dad stormed out, I sat there with my grandparents, and I even called my wife over so we could all have dinner together. My grandparents told me that they were happy that I had dealt with this once and for all, because after this, they were pretty sure that my dad was not going to cause them any more trouble anytime soon, and I feel the same way. After my wife came over, we actually had a good laugh about his meltdown, and we had a fun time together. And I think this is the way to deal with my family. Just laugh about them and let it go, because they're really not worth taking seriously. I'm happy that I have such supportive grandparents and my wonderful wife. Honestly speaking, they're the only family I need.